A brief overview of the suffering of the Palestinians during Israel's war on the Gaza Strip and the genocide of its population. I am Dr. Hidaia Alassouli. Since the war on the Gaza Strip has reached the extent of its ugliness and cruelty, and no one today knows its secrets, I am approximating the picture according to what my eyes have seen and experienced for myself, to give a simplified picture of what is happening in the Gaza Strip. From where we start. Although I haven't written articles for a long time. However, the news of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia increased and provoked me, and I found myself on the 7th of October writing an Arabic article titled, "Saudi Arabia is in the same boat with Palestine regarding the relationship with Israel." It so happened that after 1 hour from writing the article, there was noise and bustle in the world because of a very important reason: the Palestinian armed parties, led by Hamas, were able to reach the Israeli settlements by land, sea, and air, clash with the Israeli army, and achieve an amazing victory, and also obtain prisoners and hostages. Hours later, I learned that one of our neighbors in the neighborhood where I live had participated in that battle and died. 1. I am not here to analyze why Hamas carried out this battle today after it had distanced itself from conflict with Israel for many months and had concluded several truce agreements with it. But I estimate that the news of Saudi-Israeli normalization may be a reason because these normalization processes are taking place at the expense of the Palestinian cause. Israel, which occupied Palestine and committed the worst massacres, has become a friend of the normalizing countries. 2. On the other hand, the departure of all Hamas political leaders from the Gaza Strip to Turkey and Qatar before the October 7, 2023 battle was surprising to all residents of the Gaza Strip. This indicates that Hamas leaders were aware of the level of ugliness of the Israeli reaction after this battle. 3. Of course, we all expected a crazy response from Israel, as Israel is merciless and its main goal is to destroy Gaza Strip. Israel deals with the people of Gaza Strip without the slightest humanity. The bombardment and destruction continued indiscriminately, forcing the residents of the Gaza Strip to migrate from their homes. To the point that every person living in a house expected that his house would be bombed at any time. 4. Suddenly, the electricity company announced its bankruptcy from electricity and the electricity was cut off throughout the day, so that we no longer get even an hour of electricity throughout the day due to Israel cutting off electricity on its part and preventing the entrance of fuel and food. This was surprising to us because in previous wars the electricity situation did not reach that bad. However, solar energy projects have become the only outlet for residents of the Gaza Strip today to obtain a simple amount of energy that can be used to charge mobile phones and batteries, and to energize routers, and sometimes to operate motors to raise water. 5. At the same time, the Rafah border was closed and any aid was prevented from entering the Gaza Strip or to exit of patients. This was also surprising compared to previous wars. Egypt's justifications for closing the Rafah crossing border, which prevents the humanitarian aid, that Israel does not allow the aid to Gaza Strip, were also unconvincing. 7. Suddenly there was a knock on our door. Israeli pilot called one of the residents of our neighborhood informing him that we must evacuate because Israel will bomb the martyr's house next to us and another house next to it, and so the buildings next to them will be bombed also. Within a few minutes, we took refuge to one of our relatives' home, and the bombing of the martyr's house and the neighboring houses with an explosive barrel thrown on our garden, causing great destruction to our building, the targeted martyr's house, other house, and various damages to all the neighboring houses. We thanked God that we got out safely, and the money can be compensated. This is a phrase that is on the lips of every person in the Gaza Strip. 8. The next day, news came that the Israeli forces sent notices during their ground invasion of northern Gaza, stating that those in the northern Gaza Strip must migrate to the south, while my house in the south has been bombed, and the bombing does not stop for even a minute in the most horrific ways, and every day we hear about extremely horrific massacres in every place in the Gaza Strip. Most of the citizens in north region of Gaza Strip suddenly migrated from the north of the Gaza Strip to the south. They displaced to hospitals, mosques, schools, camps, or their relatives' homes. We hosted many of them in our homes. So, the Israeli intentions became clear is to reinvade the Gaza Strip, occupy it, divide it, migrate its population, and evacuate it. Everything that is happening aims is to spread the fear in the hearts of the residents of the Gaza Strip and cut off all necessities of life to force them to emigrate, whether to Sinai or elsewhere. Remember that the plan to displace the population of the Gaza Strip to Sinai was part of the deal of the century that previous USA President Trump adopted. 9. That is beside the sudden outage of gas and goods. To the point that the corn, coffee, and cheese that were sold at lowest prices were stored by merchants and their prices suddenly raised to astronomical prices. 10. This coincided with desperate attempts to close my accounts on book publishing sites and financial websites as well, just because I am Palestinian from the Gaza Strip in an attempt to exterminate Palestinian content. For example, my accounts were closed on the following publishing sites: Lulu.com, IngramsPark.com, LightingZource.com, Blurb.com, and other publishing sites. Even my personal pages were suddenly closed. You can verify that my website SQL database, where I publish my articles, anticorruption.0000space.com, was hacked to delete all articles on it. And also my personal website http://www.hidaia-alassouli.000space.com was hacked also. All of this indicates that Palestinian writers and Palestinian content are being targeted at the global level. Among the financial websites that closed my account with them were PyYPL.com, Airtem.com, SG.upbit.com, and Wise.com website that immediately cancelled my USD account on it at the beginning of the war, in addition to many other websites that closed my accounts without them, and all of this just because I am Palestinian from the Gaza Strip. 11. After our house was bombed, we tried to repair part of it to live in. The atmosphere of war continued around us. Planes and drones all the day, horrific bombing, massacres, and fire bombs everywhere without the slightest mercy. 12. We breathed a sigh of relief with the news of the first truce, which did not exceed 5 days. But we were shocked that life did not change. The markets are still empty of goods, and what is available is sold at very high prices. The people of the northern Gaza Strip who were displaced to the south are still unable to return to their areas. The diesel and gas crisis is still unresolved. Beside Israel's threats to invade Khan Yunis by land to destroy it as happened in northern Gaza, the only change is to allow some aid to be brought in and distributed through UNRWA only. 13. With the end of the first truce, Israel began implementing its plan to invade Khan Yunis by land to destroy it, as was done in northern Gaza. They began sending notices stating that the Sheikh Nasser area, the center of Khan Yunis, Ma'in and other areas are dangerous combat zones whose residents must evacuate. It had previously evacuated the areas of east of Khan Yunis such as Absin and Banish Ala. In order to force people to evacuate, Israel carried out a series of scary fireworks at night for several days to scare people, forcing them to migrate to Rafah and Al-Mawasi. The central and eastern areas of Khan Yunis became completely empty of residents. For us, we could not evacuate. First, because there is no refuge to go to, and second, because my mother was old and disabled and needed special care that could not be available to her if we were displaced to any place, and third, to resist Israel's plan to migrate us from our homes. We remained in our house, besieged, while bombardment, clashes, and fire belts surrounded us from all sides. We were praying God all day anticipating that the house would be bombed at any time. 14. The situation continued for us on this horror until a rocket was fired directly at our house again. We realized that we were being targeted and the notices were thrown at our house to evacuate. Then a Jew called us demanding that we evacuate because they were going to bomb the house of the martyr to destroy it again completely, and so our house and the neighboring houses will be bombed along with it. We had to evacuate the house. We did not find any refuge except Nasser Hospital because it had water, electricity, and facilities, and because of my mother's health disability, which requires special health care. As soon as we evacuated the house, they bombed the martyr's house again, completely destroying it, and our house next to it and all the buildings in the neighborhood were severely damaged. We did not know what happened after this. Note that Israel targeted also the father of the martyr by bombing while he is a very simple person with more than 15 people that took refuge with him in a tent at the sea. So they even pursued the martyr's father. 15. At Nasser Hospital, I tried to find a place for myself in any housing school, while my mother and her companions remained in the hospital. We were suffering from the lack of water or bathrooms to use at school, and so we were using the bathrooms at Nasser Hospital and bring water from it. 16. After that, bombing and clashes continued in the area of central Khan Yunis and west of Khan Yunis as well, and in the vicinity of Al-Amal Hospital in particular. Israel added areas adjacent to Nasser Hospital, such as Al-Batun al-Saman, Jizan al-Nayyar, Jizan Rashwan, the Al-Hay al-Namsai, and Ma'an, among the areas that must be evacuated because they will be dangerous combat areas. We were hearing daily terrifying explosions and fire belts around Nasser Hospital. On the night of the implementation of fire belts on the Al-Hay al-Namsai and storming of the cemeteries there, most of the doctors, medical teams, civil defense department, media professionals beside the people in the hospital and nearby schools ran away and displaced to other places knowing that Israel was close to invade Nasser Hospital and all areas around it. Then, overnight, Israel surrounded Al-Amal Hospital and Nasser Hospital from all sides and declared that area as a dangerous combat zone. I had to move to Nasser Hospital to be close to my family there and because of the displacement of the administrations of all the schools surrounding Nasser Hospital and the people that took refuge there. 17. After several days, Al-Amal Hospital and the Al-Sona school were stormed and all displaced people there were forced to evacuate. Then Israeli forces evacuated all the housing schools around Nasser Hospital and destroyed them, making them not suitable for residence on them. Then it was Nasser Hospital's turn. Israeli forces surrounded Al-Nasser Hospital from all sides and snipers were deployed everywhere to the point that no one was able to leave the building he was in. My sister was working among the medical staff. The Israeli forces instructed all people that took refuge on the hospital to evacuate it. Only patients and medical staff are allowed to stay there. My mother's condition worsened a lot that day and she was transferred to intensive care while we were all forced to evacuate and we relied that my mother will be under the care of my sister, who was a member of the medical staff. 18. We went through the checkpoints so that Israel could arrest whomever it wanted through eye fingerprinting. Then the Israeli forces stormed Nasser Hospital. According to what my sister said, after she was able to leave Nasser Hospital, they separated the medical staff from the patients, and she was trapped in a different building than the building in which my mother was in intensive care. They prevented her from accompanying her when she was transferred to another hospital, and she did not know anything about her until the Jews withdrew from Nasser Hospital. They interrogated the men from the medical staff, stripped naked them in the cold weather, abused them, insulted them, and arrested whomever they wanted. They cut off electricity and communications to prevent them from communicating with the outside world. They forcefully stormed all the rooms in all the buildings to search them, and they did not leave a room without breaking its door and destroying it, making the rooms open to the thieves. 19. When the news came about the transfer of some patients from Nasser Hospital, I started calling Al Hilal daily asking them to inform me if they had transferred my mother and to which hospital she was transferred. They refused to assist me. I called the Hilal operations in Ramallah asking for help. At the end, they got information that my mother had been transferred to the European hospital. I run immediately in the morning to the European hospital and shocked that my mother had been martyred as she was injured by the hit of artillery shell at Nasser Hospital. I wondered how the missile reached my mother while she was in intensive care. How they throw missiles at the buildings that contains patients and medical staff. According to what I was told when I asked about the circumstances of her death, my mother came in a chair without sick companion or a file. She was unable to speak due to the extent of the pain she was in. She was referred to the surgery department after they discovered her injury. Because she was unaccompanied, they tried to ask people there with the same family name if they knew her. A member of her family recognized her. She was martyred at 2 o'clock at night in 22 million Argentine pesos 2024, a few hours before my arrival. Our relative buried her immediately with members of her family on land near the European hospital that had been donated by one of the families to bury the martyrs. I really wonder how patients remain in Nasser Hospital in intensive care without doctors or medical assistance, and they also hit by rocket or artillery shells, so they do not find anyone to help them, and transferred to other hospital without sick companion and without any file. Note that my mother's relative, who buried her, had a great tragedy, as the Israeli forces bombed the building in which he lived with his family and relatives, over the heads of the residents, and his daughter was martyred, and all members of his household were seriously injured. 20. When the Jews withdrew from Nasser Hospital, they allowed people to enter it and to further destroy it as they wish. All the rooms were open because the Israeli occupation stormed them for inspection. Everything was stolen. They stole diesel fuel, solar cells, beds, mattresses, and medical devices. There was nothing left on it that was not stolen. This caused the largest and most important hospital in Khan Yunis to be completely out of service. This happened with all the areas that the Israeli forces destroyed, caused corruption, and forced its people to evacuate. Then the Israeli forces withdrew partially, temporarily, so that thieves can enter to steal homes and schools there. 21. After Israel destroyed Khan Yunis and evacuated its residents, it proceeded to destroy Hamad town. The same scenario that happened in all areas of Khan Yunis was repeated. The Israeli forces besieged Hamad town and forced all residents to evacuate through the checkpoints to arrest whomever they wanted. They destroyed all the residential towers there and then withdrew from it, leaving the destroyed buildings exposed to be stolen by the thieves. 22. Then they returned to Al-Shifa Hospital to destroy it and its surroundings, abuse the displaced people and medical teams, and abandon them with the same scenario they used in Nasser Hospital. Al-Shifa Hospital is completely out of service nowadays, like Nasser Hospital. All of this proves that Israel's goal is to destroy the Gaza Strip and eliminate all necessities of life in it, including hospitals, schools, homes, infrastructure, service institutions, roads, and mosques, and to cause famine, in addition to displacing and abusing the population. 23. When we heard about the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from Khan Yunis, the residents went to Khan Yunis to find out what happened to their homes. People were shocked by the extent of destruction that occurred to their homes. Whoever wanders the streets of Khan Yunis after the withdrawal of the Jews will be shocked that all the buildings, without exception, are completely destroyed. There is no building, whether residential or commercial, governmental institution, private institution, hospital, school, or mosque that is suitable for living or even possible to be reclaimed. Most of the buildings are completely destroyed. Even those that appear standing from the outside are completely destroyed by the artillery or rocket shells from the inside, or burned by the artillery or rocket shells and fire belts. Beside that, in most buildings the stairs have been destroyed to prevent people from returning to their destroyed apartments. 24. For us, we found that our house had been damaged by 80% and was subjected to shelling and bulldozing many times again after we left it. The Israeli forces completely blew up the stairs with bombs to prevent us from climbing into our apartments, and thus it was no longer become suitable for residents even if the Israeli occupation withdrew from Gaza Strip. The same destruction occurred in all buildings on Khan Yunis. 25. My sister and her husband house in Abbasan al-Yadida also bombed and completely destroyed and also burned from inside, so they can't get benefit from anything inside their house. 26. This demonstrates one fact, which is that the Israeli occupation's goal in this war is to destroy the Gaza Strip, house by house, hospital by hospital, school by school, shop by shop, established institution, and mosque by mosque, so that the residents of the Gaza Strip will not find any place to return to and it will become destitute of any necessities of life. The Israeli occupation's clear goal when it asked the residents to evacuate their areas was to completely destroy these areas to prevent the residents from returning to their homes and to eliminate any hope to return to their normal life after its withdrawal. 27. As you can see every day, Israel threatens to invade Rafah, causing the same destruction it brought to Khan Yunis and northern Gaza. With the same scenario, blocks will be gradually being invaded, and these areas will be declared as areas of combat and clashes. People will be frightened with fire belts, so they flee to any place they believe is safe, fearing for their lives and the lives of their children. Then the Israeli forces will destroy all the buildings on Rafah, and when it will withdraw partially and tactically from Rafah, these buildings will become a target for looting by thieves. Residents will not be able to return to their areas due to the destruction of their homes, the lack of necessities for life, and the fear of being besieged by the Israeli forces if they return. They will not be able to protect their belongings on their destroyed homes. 28. The news of the armistice negotiations no longer concerns us. There are no buildings that the people can return to them, and there is no improvement on their living conditions. 29. All of this is happening amidst the silence of the world while America and Israel's allies declare their continued support for Israel and deny its genocide of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli forces kill civilians and destroy everything in Gaza Strip, including hospitals, mosques, and schools, which have become the forefront of its goals. Israeli forces migrate residents from their homes in order to destroy them, then leave them vulnerable to looters and thieves. They besiege all areas, arrest young people, and torture them. The devils of the world allied against Gaza Strip amid the silence of the whole world. Then America comes to deceive the world with deceptive slogans that it appeals Israel to allow the entrance of the aid to Gaza Strip and avoid killing civilians. As if Israel has the right, from America's point of view, to rob from the Palestinians their money, lands, homes, infrastructures, and all the necessities of life, and to migrate them, while in the eyes of America and Israeli allies, the absolute rights of the Palestinians just bag of flour and food. 30. Beside the exploitation of people through travel arrangements. Whoever wants to escape this heinous war in Gaza Strip by traveling to Egypt and then to any other country must pay more than $5,000 per person, which is paid to war merchants and coordination. Only whoever has mediator can travel for free through coordination with Egyptian intelligence. Whoever leaves the Gaza Strip get lost, not knowing his destination, how he will live outside his homeland, and whether he will be able to return to it after that. 31. Monopolistic war merchants took advantage of the blockade and the lack of goods to increase prices. A kilo of flour, which cost 25 shekels before the war, reached $100, or more than 350 shekels, when it was no longer available in the markets. A kilo of potatoes, eggplants, or lemons, which used to not exceed 2 shekels before the war, reaches 15 shekels today. An ounce of coffee, a quarter kilo, which did not exceed 5 shekels before the war, reached 100 shekels. A kilo of sugar, which did not exceed 4 shekels before the war, has reached 70 shekels today. A kilo of meat, which did not exceed 15 shekels before the war, has reached 100 shekels. Even a kilo of fish, which used to not exceed 10 shekels, now costs 70 shekels. Diesel, which used to cost no more than 7 shekels per liter, is now 45 shekels per liter. Even the price of tea rose to 40 shekels per 100 wicks, which was about 10 shekels. All of this aims to cause famine for the Palestinian people. 32. If you ask about communications and the internet in the Gaza Strip, there are no communications or internet. Israel often cuts off internet communications on its part. Communications were also completely cut off in all areas of Khan Yunis. Even if communications are available in the areas of displacement, our phones are not available for reception due to the damage to the Jawal, Wadaniya and Paltal networks in light of the destruction that occurred in all areas. Also, most of the messages do not arrive because the phones are not available on the network most of the time, while the company does not store them for the user to send to it when the recipient becomes available on the network. The internet is available only in certain areas in the central Gaza Strip, Rafah, and areas inhabited by the card system only, and it is very slow and is not suitable for opening most sites to sign in. It is only suitable for WhatsApp, Telegram, and reading emails via mobile phone. There is also no internet in the Al-Mawasi areas on the sea, to which Israel forces residents to move and set up tents. Only those who have phones that support eSIM can surf the internet with it. These are expensive phones and are not available in the market either. Not to mention that our phones are monitored by the Israeli occupation. 33. As for banks and financial transactions, they have all been closed since the war began on October 7, adding to the destruction that befell all bank branches in the Gaza Strip, which will hinder their opening even if the war ends. People cannot withdraw their money from their accounts. There is only ATM machine in Rafah and an ATM in Deir al-Balah available for withdrawing Visa or MasterCards, but it is very crowded and vulnerable to bullying and chaos, in addition to the lack of liquidity, so no one can withdraw through these ATMs today. Just later the Palestinian bank in Deir al-Balah brought security staff to arrange the withdrawal process through daily registration of the people that need to withdraw from their ATM machine. Even if a person was able to withdraw, it is possible to withdraw maximum 400 Jordanian dinars, and when that amount is exchanged to shekels at any exchange office, it is not exchanged at the real international exchange rate, but rather they are exchanged at a much lower rate. For example, the global exchange rate is around 5.32 shekels for 1 Jordanian dinar, which is what the Bank of Palestine uses to exchange from shekels to the Jordanian dinar. But when a person exchanges the amount withdrawn from the bank in Jordanian dinars to shekels at any exchange office, it is exchanged at a much lower rate of about 4.7 shekels for 1 JOD and the person loses a lot. 34. The exchange offices also stopped all financial transactions, such as Western Union transfers, withdrawals from Visa cards through ATM machine, or withdrawals from the Jawal Pay wallet or PalPay wallet, in order to restrict people in all aspects.
سنرجع يوما إلى حينا ونغرق في دافئات المنى سنرجع مهما يمر الزمان وتنأى المسافات ما بين
الله يعوضك عوض خير يا دكتور، بعوضك، لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. هاي من جوا ولا إشي ولا إشي، دمار 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 بشكل مش طبيعي. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله.
سنرجع يوما إلى حينا ونغرق في دافئات المنى سنرجع مهما يمر الزمان وتنأى المسافات ما بين